If you think you've heard every crazy prison escape story, think again. Smash that subscribe button, hit like, and drop a comment if you're ready for a tale so bizarre, so audacious, it'll make you question reality itself. Because what you about to witness isn't just an escape. It's a masterclass in survival that unfolded in the most unexpected place imaginable. December 2nd, 2005. Charlotte, North Carolina. The morning shift manager at a McDonald's on North Tryon Street arrived at 5:30 a.m. to open the restaurant. She unlocked the back door, stepped into the dimly lit kitchen, and froze. The safe was open, empty, $17,000 gone. But that wasn't what made her blood run cold. It was the ceiling. A section of acoustic tiles had been removed, creating a gaping black hole above the manager's office. Someone had come through the roof. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department arrived within minutes. Detective Marcus Webb stood in that office, staring up at the violated ceiling, and immediately knew this wasn't an amateur job. The cut was clean, precise, surgical. No broken windows. No forced doors. Just a phantom who descended from above like a ghost, cracked the safe, and vanished back into the darkness. This was the 7th McDonald's hit in 3 months. Same method, same signature, always through the roof. The media dubbed him the Roofman. But to law enforcement, he was Jeffrey Manchester, a name that carried weight in criminal databases across the Southeast. Manchester wasn't just any burglar. He was a specialist, a criminal craftsman who'd spent years perfecting his trade. His method was elegant in its simplicity. Scope out fast food restaurants with flat roofs, study their patterns, wait for the dead of night, cut through the roof, with power tools drop down into the closed restaurant, crack the safe, and disappear before sunrise. No confrontation, no violence, just precision and patience. But Manchester had made one critical mistake 6 months earlier. After a string of successful robberies across North Carolina, he'd gotten sloppy during a heist in Gastonia. A silent alarm he didn't know existed had triggered. Police surrounded the building within minutes. Manchester, trapped inside a Burger King, had surrendered without resistance. He was sentenced to 65 years in federal prison for multiple counts of breaking and entering, safecracking, and interstate theft. That should have been the end of the Roofman story. But Jeffrey Manchester had other plans. On October 23, 2005, just 4 months into his sentence at the Chicago Metropolitan Correctional Center, Manchester walked out during a routine prisoner transfer. In the chaos of moving inmates between facilities, he simply slipped away. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. Vanished into the urban sprawl of Chicago like smoke. The FBI issued a federal warrant. His face appeared on wanted posters across the Midwest and Southeast. Every law enforcement agency in the country was looking for him. And now, 2 months after his escape, the Roofman was back to work in Charlotte. Detective Webb assembled a task force. They studied Manchester's previous hits, mapped his targets, analyzed his patterns. Every McDonald's, every Burger King, every Wendy's in the Charlotte metro area went on high alert. Undercover officers staked out locations. Security systems were upgraded. But Manchester was always one step ahead, striking restaurants they hadn't anticipated, disappearing into the night like a specter. The robberies continued. December turned into January. 7 hits became 12, then 15. The safe thefts were bad enough. But what haunted Webb was the question that kept him awake at night. Where was Manchester hiding? They'd checked every motel, every homeless shelter, every known associate's address. Nothing. It was as if Jeffrey Manchester had found a way to exist outside the normal world, invisible to everyone searching for him. Then came the break they'd been waiting for. January 10th, 2006. A security guard at the ToysRUs on Pineville Matthews Road in South Charlotte was doing his routine midnight patrol. The massive store, over 50,000 square feet of retail space, sat quiet and empty, aisles of toys casting long shadows under the emergency lighting. The guard, a retired cop named Dennis Sullivan, knew every corner of this place. He'd worked here for 3 years without incident. But tonight, something felt wrong. A subtle smell in the air. Not unpleasant, just out of place. Like someone had been cooking. He followed his instincts through the toy aisles, past the video game section, toward the back of the store where the bicycles were displayed. That's when he saw it. A makeshift living space, hidden behind a wall of stacked bicycle boxes. A sleeping bag. Baby monitors positioned strategically to watch the store entrances. Food wrappers. A battery-powered hot plate. Someone had been living here. Sullivan called the police immediately. Within an hour, the store was surrounded. SWAT teams moved in, clearing aisles, searching every possible hiding spot. But whoever had been camping in the ToysRUs was gone. Fled. The only thing left behind was evidence of an impossible existence. Someone had been living inside a closed retail store, undetected, for weeks. Detective Webb arrived on scene and studied the abandoned camp. His mind raced through the possibilities. The baby monitors were genius. They'd alert the occupant if anyone entered during off hours. The location, hidden deep in the store behind merchandise, was brilliant. But who would be desperate enough, clever enough, to attempt something like this? Then he saw it. A receipt, crumpled near the sleeping bag. A McDonald's receipt. From the North Tryon Street location. Dated 3 days ago. The same McDonald's that had been hit through the roof last month. Webb's blood ran cold. Jeffrey Manchester, the Roofman. He'd been hiding in plain sight, living inside a toy store like some twisted version of a child's fantasy. But if he'd abandoned this location, where had he gone? And more importantly, how many other stores might he have infiltrated? The task force mobilized immediately. Every major retail store in Charlotte with a large footprint became a potential hiding spot. Target, Walmart, Circuit City, Best Buy. Teams were dispatched to conduct overnight searches. The media got wind of the story, and suddenly the Roofman wasn't just a burglar. He was a legend, a criminal who turned a children's toy store into his secret hideout while evading a nationwide manhunt. But as Webb coordinated the search efforts, analyzing Manchester's patterns, trying to predict his next move, he received a call that changed everything. The manager of another ToysRUs, this one in nearby Concord, reported something strange. Motion sensors in the store had been malfunctioning for weeks. Security footage showed unexplained shadows moving through aisles after closing. The manager had assumed it was technical glitches. Now, she wasn't so sure. Webb grabbed his team and headed to Concord. They arrived at the ToysRUs at 2 a.m., entering through the back loading dock in complete silence. The store stretched before them, rows of toys and games creating a labyrinth of potential hiding places. They split up, moving methodically through departments: action figures, board games, stuffed animals, sporting goods. Then, from the back corner near the outdoor toys section, Webb heard it. The faintest sound of movement. Breathing. He raised his hand, signaling his team to halt. They converged slowly, weapons drawn, hearts pounding. Behind a display of plastic playhouses and swing sets, illuminated by the green glow of emergency exit signs, they found him. Jeffrey Manchester sat cross-legged on a sleeping bag, surrounded by baby monitors and food supplies, a book in his hands. He looked up at the officers with tired eyes and simply nodded. No resistance. No dramatic escape attempt. Just acceptance. After months on the run, living like a ghost in the forgotten corners of American retail, the Roofman's luck had finally run out. But as they placed Manchester in handcuffs and let him out of the toy store, Detective Webb couldn't shake the feeling that something about this was wrong. Manchester had evaded capture for months. He was meticulous, careful, always planning 3 steps ahead. So why had he left such obvious clues at the first ToysRUs? Why had he allowed himself to be caught so easily? And when Webb looked into Manchester's eyes as they walked him to the patrol car, he saw something that made his skin crawl. Not fear, not regret, but satisfaction. Like a man who'd accomplished exactly what he'd set out to do. Like this arrest was part of a larger plan that nobody else could see yet. As the patrol car pulled away, Manchester looked back at the ToysRUs one final time and smiled. Because hidden somewhere in that massive store, in a place the police hadn't thought to search, was something that would turn this entire case on its head. The interrogation room at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department was small, windowless, designed to make suspects feel trapped. Jeffrey Manchester sat calmly across from Detective Webb, his hands folded on the metal table, looking more like a patient teacher than a federal fugitive. He'd waived his right to an attorney immediately, which sent alarm bells ringing through Webb's mind. Criminals like Manchester, educated in the system, never gave up their rights unless they had an angle. "You've been living in toy stores," Webb said, sliding crime scene photos across the table. "For how long, Jeffrey?" Manchester studied the photos with mild interest, as if seeing someone else's handiwork. "About 2 months. Maybe longer. Time gets strange when you're living off the grid." 2 months. Webb leaned back, watching Manchester's body language. You escaped in October. It's January. That's 3 months. Where were you the first month? Around. Manchester smiled. Chicago. Then Indianapolis. I traveled light, moved at night. I'm good at being invisible, detective. You know that. The McDonald's robberies. That was you funding your little camping trips. A man has to eat. Manchester's tone was casual, almost proud. Those safes weren't difficult. Restaurant managers get lazy with security. Same codes for months. Predictable patterns. I watched them, learned their routines, and took what I needed. Webb slid another photo across the table. The Toys"R"Us in Charlotte, the makeshift camp behind the bicycle boxes. Why toy stores, Jeffrey? Of all the places you could hide. For the first time, something flickered across Manchester's face. Not shame, but something deeper. Nostalgia, perhaps. Or sadness. They're perfect. Big enough to get lost in. Closed at night, so nobody bothers you. And they have everything you need. Food in the seasonal section, camping gear and sporting goods, baby monitors for security. Plus, there's something peaceful about being surrounded by toys. Reminds you of simpler times. Simple. Webb's voice hardened. You terrorized restaurant workers, stole over $200,000, escaped federal custody, and you call it simple? Manchester met Webb's eyes directly. I never hurt anyone. Not once. No weapons. No violence. Just property crimes. I took money from corporations that won't even notice it's missing. I didn't traumatize anyone or destroy lives. Tell that to the night manager who found her safe cracked open. Tell that to the security guard who discovered you'd been living in his store for weeks. You think they sleep well at night? Manchester's expression didn't change. Better than the people rotting in maximum security for crimes that hurt nobody. I'm a thief, detective. A good one. But I'm not a monster. Webb pulled out another file, this one thicker. Let's talk about your escape. Chicago Metropolitan Correctional Center. Highly secure facility. You just walked out during a prisoner transfer. How? Luck. Opportunity. A moment of chaos when nobody was watching closely enough. Manchester shrugged. I've spent my whole adult life observing systems, finding weaknesses. Prisons are just another system. And the toy stores? How did you choose them? Research. Before I escaped, I studied retail store layouts, security systems, closing procedures. I knew exactly where I was going and how I'd survive. The Toys"R"Us stores were perfect. Large footprints, minimal overnight security, plenty of resources. I'd enter through the roof, just like the restaurants, seal myself inside, and live like a ghost. Webb leaned forward. The first Toys"R"Us in Charlotte. You left evidence behind. Baby monitors still running. Food wrappers. A McDonald's receipt. You're too careful for mistakes like that, Jeffrey. You wanted us to find that camp. Manchester's smile returned, wider this time. Did I? Why? What's the angle? Maybe I was tired of running. Maybe I wanted to come in from the cold. Bullshit. Webb slammed his hand on the table. You had it made. Multiple hiding spots. Money from the robberies. You could have stayed invisible for years. But you left breadcrumbs leading us right to you. What? Manchester stood up, stretched his legs, walked to the corner of the room. The officers outside tensed, hands moving toward their weapons. But Manchester just stood there, staring at the wall. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost vulnerable. You ever feel like you're living the wrong life, detective? Like somewhere along the way, you made choices that locked you into a path you never really wanted. Webb didn't answer. I was 12 when my father left. 13 when my mother started drinking. 14 when I committed my first burglary. Broke into a convenience store through the roof, stole enough food to feed myself and my little sister for a week. Nobody caught me. Nobody even knew I existed. I got good at it. Really good. By 16, I was supporting both of us with what I took. By 20, it was the only life I knew. That's supposed to make me sympathetic? Manchester turned around. No, it's supposed to make you understand. I've been invisible my whole life. A ghost moving through other people's worlds, taking what I need to survive, never leaving a trace. But living in those toy stores, surrounded by all those childhood dreams packaged in plastic and cardboard, I started thinking about the kid I used to be. Before the roofs and the safes and the running. Touching story. Doesn't explain why you surrendered. I didn't surrender. Manchester's eyes hardened. I got caught. There's a difference. Webb studied him, trying to read the truth beneath the performance. Something about this didn't add up. Manchester was too controlled, too calculated. This wasn't a man broken by capture. This was a man executing a plan. What aren't you telling me, Jeffrey? Everything I've told you is true, detective. You can verify it all. That's not what I asked. Before Manchester could respond, Webb's phone buzzed. A text from the evidence team processing the Concord ToysRUs. He read it once, then again, his face going pale. What is it? Manchester asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Webb looked up, studying Manchester with new eyes. They found another camp. In the Concord store. Behind the outdoor toys section where we arrested you. Yes, that's where I was living. No. Webb's voice was ice. That camp had been there for weeks. But they found a second one. In the storage area above the ceiling tiles in the back office. Newer. Set up within the last few days. With supplies you couldn't have accessed after we started watching the store. Manchester said nothing, but that smile returned. There's someone else, Webb whispered. You weren't alone. You had a partner. Did I? Webb moved fast, grabbing Manchester by the collar, pulling him close. Who else is out there? Who else did you teach your methods to? Manchester's smile never wavered. You're asking the wrong questions, detective. Then tell me the right ones. The question isn't who else is out there. Manchester's voice dropped to a whisper. The question is why I let you catch me when I had multiple hideouts, multiple escape routes, and absolutely no reason to stop. Webb released him, stepping back. His mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Manchester had mentioned a sister. The file said she'd died 5 years ago from a drug overdose. But what if that was wrong? What if she was alive, and Manchester had been training her, teaching her everything he knew? Where is she? Webb demanded. Who? Your sister, Sarah Manchester. The file says she's dead, but you never mention her in past tense. Where is she? Manchester's expression finally changed, a flicker of something real breaking through the performance. Sarah's dead, detective. She's been dead for 5 years. Then who's living in the other camp? I told you. You're asking the wrong questions. Manchester sat back down, folding his hands again. But I'll give you a hint. Check the security footage from all the Charlotte ToysRUs locations. Not just the ones you searched. All of them. Go back 3 months. And look for patterns. Webb's phone buzzed again. Another text. This one from a different evidence team. They'd been reviewing security footage from the original Charlotte ToysRUs as part of the investigation. They'd found something. A figure on the tapes, moving through the store late at night, weeks before Manchester was caught. But it wasn't Manchester. The body type was wrong. Smaller. Female. Webb's blood turned to ice. What did you do? I survived. I adapted. And I made sure that even if I got caught, the Roofman would continue. Manchester leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed now. You wanted to know why I left clues? Why I let you find me? Because I needed you to think the story was over. I needed you to believe you'd won. But the Roofman was never just me, detective. It was an idea, a method, a way of existing outside the system. Who is she? Someone who needed what I could teach them. Someone invisible, just like I used to be. Someone hungry enough to learn and desperate enough to disappear. Webb's mind spun. If Manchester had been training someone, teaching them his methods, there could be camps in stores all across Charlotte. All across North Carolina. Hell, all across the country. An entire network of ghosts, living in the hidden spaces of American retail, surviving on stolen cash and stolen time. Where is she right now? Manchester checked an imaginary watch. If I had to guess, probably hitting her 3rd or 4th McDonald's of the week. She's faster than I was. More efficient. Hungrier. I taught her well. Webb slammed his hands on the table. Give me a name. Why? So you can catch her and put her in the same system that created both of us? So you can lock her away and pretend you've solved the problem? Manchester shook his head. She's what I should have been if I'd started younger. Smarter. And by the time you figure out where she is, she'll be 3 states away, living in another store, completely invisible. This is insane. This is survival. Manchester stood up again. And the beautiful thing, detective? Even if you catch her, the method exists now. It's out there in the world. Anyone desperate enough, anyone invisible enough, can disappear into these massive retail spaces and survive for months, maybe years. I proved it's possible. She's proving it can be refined. And there will be others. Webb felt the investigation expanding in his mind, growing into something massive and uncontainable. How many toy stores were there in America? How many big box retailers with vast interiors and minimal overnight security? Hundreds? Thousands? If Manchester had really created a blueprint for invisible survival, They were looking at a problem that went far beyond one escaped convict. "We'll find her," Webb said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe. Eventually. But while you're looking for her, how many others are already out there, learning the same tricks? The homeless, the desperate, the invisible people society forgot about. I didn't just escape prison, detective. I created a new way to exist. And that's a lot harder to catch than one person." Webb left the interrogation room, his mind reeling. Outside, his team waited for instructions, but he had none to give. They'd caught the Roofman. But in doing so, they discovered something far more troubling: an entire methodology for disappearing into plain sight. As officers led Manchester back to his cell, the criminal turned and looked at Webb one final time. "Check the stores, detective. Check all of them. But ask yourself this: if someone is invisible enough, careful enough, patient enough, would you even know they were there?" The question haunted Webb as he coordinated the massive search operation that followed. Every ToysRUs, Target, Walmart, and Circuit City in the Charlotte metro area was swept. They found 2 more camps, empty, recently abandoned. And in one, they found something that made the entire investigation shift into nightmare territory: a handwritten manual detailing every aspect of Manchester's method. How to choose a store, how to enter undetected, how to set up monitoring systems, how to crack safes, how to remain invisible. And at the bottom of the last page, a single sentence: "For Sarah, who deserved a better life than the one they gave us." But Sarah Manchester was dead. Webb had verified it himself. Death certificate, burial records, witnesses. So who had Manchester been training? 3 weeks after Jeffrey Manchester's arrest, Detective Webb stood in the conference room at police headquarters, staring at a wall covered in maps, photographs, and evidence reports. The investigation had matriculated into something unprecedented: a multi-state task force tracking what they were now calling Roofman copycats. Reports were flooding in from across the Southeast. Toy stores reporting strange occurrences. Fast food restaurants hit through the roof. Security footage showing shadows where no one should be. But they hadn't found her. Whoever Manchester had trained remained a ghost. Webb returned to the jail almost daily, trying to extract more information, but Manchester had gone silent. He'd said everything he needed to say during that first interrogation. Now he just sat in his cell, reading books, exercising, waiting for his transfer back to federal prison with an expression of complete serenity. Until the morning of February 3rd, 2006. Webb was in his office when the call came through. A ToysRUs manager in Greensboro, North Carolina, 2 hours northeast of Charlotte, had arrived early to receive a shipment. The delivery driver noticed something strange. One of the roof panels looked damaged. Security was called. They found a clean circular cut in the roof, just like Manchester's signature, leading down into the store's ceiling crawl space. Webb drove to Greensboro with a tactical team, arriving just after dawn. They entered the store with weapons drawn, moving through aisles of toys while the morning sun filtered through the front windows. The cut in the roof was professional, precise, unmistakably Manchester's technique. But Manchester was in jail, which meant his protege was real, active, and operating exactly as he'd predicted. They found the camp in the automotive section, hidden behind a display of Power Wheels and electric cars. It was more sophisticated than Manchester's setups: solar chargers for electronics, a portable water filtration system, vacuum-sealed food supplies designed to last months. This wasn't someone surviving day to day. This was someone planning for the long term. And then Webb saw it. A photograph, tucked into the sleeping bag. A young girl, maybe 14 or 15, standing next to Jeffrey Manchester. They were at a playground, both smiling. The girl had Manchester's eyes, his sharp features. Webb flipped the photo over. Written in faded ink: Sarah, age 14. The year before everything fell apart. Webb's hands trembled. He pulled out his phone, called the station, demanded they pull Sarah Manchester's death certificate again. 20 minutes later, the call came back. There was a discrepancy. The body identified as Sarah Manchester 5 years ago had been cremated immediately. No autopsy, minimal documentation. The identification had been made by Jeffrey Manchester himself, who'd claimed his sister had overdosed in a motel room. But what if he'd lied? What if Sarah had never died? What if Manchester had faked her death to get her completely off the grid, erasing her from all systems, making her perfectly invisible? Webb ordered a deeper investigation. Within hours, they had confirmation. The woman who'd actually died in that motel room was a Jane Doe, homeless, no identification. Manchester had claimed her body, said she was his sister, handled all the arrangements. Sarah Manchester, legally dead for 5 years, could be anyone, anywhere, completely untraceable. She'd been invisible for half a decade. Webb raced back to the jail, demanding to see Manchester immediately. The guards brought him to the visiting room, and for the first time, Webb saw genuine concern flash across the criminal's face. "She's alive," Webb said, slamming the photograph on the table between them. "Your sister. You faked her death. You've been protecting her, training her, keeping her off every radar in existence." Manchester stared at the photograph, his controlled facade cracking. "Where did you find this?" "Greensboro ToysRUs. Her camp. She's been following your playbook exactly, but she's better at it than you ever were." Webb leaned forward. "I need you to tell me where she is, Jeffrey. Not for my sake. For hers. Because this can't continue. Eventually, she'll make a mistake. Eventually, she'll get caught or hurt. And when that happens, she won't make a mistake," Manchester interrupted. "I taught her better than that. Everyone makes mistakes. You did. That's why you're here." "I'm here because I chose to be here." Manchester's voice was quiet but firm. "I let you catch me because Sarah needed me to. As long as the FBI was hunting me, they might eventually find her. But if they think they caught the Roofman, if they think the story's over, they stop looking. They stop seeing." Webb felt the pieces clicking into place. "You sacrificed yourself. You created that obvious camp in Charlotte. Left clues. Let us track you down. All to take the heat off your sister. She's all I have. The only family I've got left. Our father abandoned us. Our mother drank herself to death. The system never gave a damn about 2 poor kids from nowhere. So I took care of her the only way I knew how. I taught her to survive outside that system. To be invisible. To need nothing from a world that had nothing to offer us." "And the manual?" "The one we found with her name on it." Manchester smiled sadly. "That was her idea. She wanted to help others like us. The forgotten people. The invisible ones. She believed if we documented the method, shared it, maybe others could find a way to survive too. I told her it was dangerous, that it would bring attention. But Sarah's always had a bigger heart than me. Where is she, Jeffrey?" "I don't know. We planned it that way. Complete separation once I got caught. No contact. No communication. She could be anywhere. North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee. She moves constantly, never stays in one place too long. And she's careful. More careful than I ever was." Webb leaned back, frustration building. "You realize what you've created, don't you? This isn't just about you and your sister anymore. We're getting reports of Roofman-style break-ins across 6 states. People are copying your method. Living in stores. Robbing restaurants. It's becoming an epidemic." "Good." Manchester's response shocked Webb. "Good. Let the forgotten people find a way to survive. Let them discover they don't have to freeze on streets or starve in shelters. The retail corporations lose more money to shoplifting in a day than my sister and I took in years. Nobody's really getting hurt. That's not how the law works." "The law?" Manchester laughed bitterly. "The law that puts people in cages for trying to survive. The law that protects corporate profits over human lives. The law that would rather Sarah freeze to death on a street corner than find shelter in an empty building. Forgive me if I don't have much faith in the law, detective." Webb wanted to argue, but part of him understood. He'd seen the homelessness crisis growing in Charlotte. He'd seen desperate people with nowhere to go. Manchester's method, criminal as it was, offered survival to people the system had abandoned. "I can't just let this go," Webb said. "There has to be accountability. Then hold me accountable. I'm the one who created this. I'm the one who taught Sarah. I'm the one who robbed those restaurants. Do whatever you need to do to me. But leave her alone. Let her be invisible. Let her survive." Over the following weeks, Webb continued the investigation, but it felt increasingly futile. They'd find a camp, process it as a crime scene, and by the time they finished, 2 more would pop up in different cities. The method had spread. Online forums were discussing it. Homeless advocacy groups were quietly sharing information. The invisible population was learning to truly disappear. Then, on March 15th, Webb received an envelope at his office. No return address. Inside was a single handwritten letter. "Detective Webb," it read. "You don't know me, but you've been searching for me. My brother made choices to protect me, and I'll honor those choices by staying free. But I wanted you to understand something. We're not monsters. We're survivors. Every person living in those stores, every ghost moving through retail spaces at night, they're not criminals. They're human beings the system forgot about. My brother gave them hope. He gave them a method to survive. And I'll continue his work, not through theft, but through teaching. There are ways to exist that don't harm anyone. Don't steal from anyone. Just utilize empty spaces that would otherwise go unused. Consider this a promise. No more restaurant robberies. No more theft. Just survival. And consider this a challenge. If your system was better, if it actually cared for its most vulnerable, we wouldn't need to disappear. We'd choose to be visible. Thank you for catching my brother quickly. He wanted to come in before winter fully hit. Prisons are warmer than rooftops. He's exactly where he needs to be. S. Webb read the letter 3 times. Part of him wanted to analyze the handwriting, trace the postmark, launch a full investigation. But another part, the part that had seen too many homeless people die on Charlotte streets during cold winters, understood that maybe this wasn't a case he was meant to solve. Jeffrey Manchester was transferred to a maximum security federal prison in April 2006. He received an additional 20 years on top of his original sentence. He never spoke about his sister again, never gave investigators anything they could use to find her. And the Roofman sightings continued. Toy stores across America reported strange occurrences. Security footage captured shadows. But no one was ever caught. No one was ever identified. The invisible population had learned to truly disappear. Webb retired from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department 2 years later. On his last day, cleaning out his desk, he found that letter from Sarah Manchester tucked in his case files. He'd never officially logged it as evidence. Never showed it to anyone. He read it one final time, then placed it in his personal effects to take home. Some cases, he'd learned, weren't meant to be solved. Some people were meant to remain invisible. And maybe, in a world that had failed its most vulnerable, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. 10 years later, in 2016, a documentary filmmaker researching the Roofman case interviewed former retail workers from across the Southeast. Multiple sources, speaking on condition of anonymity, reported finding camps in their stores, but not the criminal kind Manchester had created. These were different, organized, respectful. The inhabitants would clean up completely, leave no trace, never steal. Just survive. Use the space overnight when it was empty, then vanish before opening. One former ToysRUs manager in Raleigh, North Carolina, described finding a camp in her store's storage area. Along with the usual supplies, there was a note: "Thank you for the shelter. I've restocked the supplies I used and cleaned the area. No harm intended. Just surviving." One of the invisible. The manager never reported it. She just made sure that section of storage stayed accessible, quietly leaving supplies, blankets, non-perishable food, batteries. She never saw who took them. Never found evidence of anyone living there again. But the supplies would disappear and be replaced with notes of thanks. "I figured," she told the documentary filmmaker, "if someone needed shelter that badly and they weren't causing any harm, who was I to take that away? We throw away more stuff at closing than they'd ever use. The building's empty at night anyway." Maybe Manchester was right. Maybe there are ways to survive that don't hurt anyone. Maybe being invisible isn't always criminal. Sometimes it's just necessary. As for Sarah Manchester, she was never found, never identified, never caught. In legal records, she remains dead, a casualty of a drug overdose in 2001. But across the Southeast, in the hidden corners of retail spaces, in the forgotten crawl spaces and storage areas of American commerce, there are whispers of her legacy. They call them the invisible ones now. The people who've learned to exist in the spaces between, who survive without stealing, who've turned Manchester's criminal method into something closer to a survival movement. No one knows how many there are. No one knows where they hide. They're ghosts in the machine of American retail, present but unseen, surviving in a world that forgot they existed. And somewhere out there, maybe in a ToysRUs that's since closed, or a Circuit City that's now abandoned, or any of the 1,000 big box stores that the American landscape, Sarah Manchester might still be teaching others her brother's methods. Refined, improved, made ethical. Because the Roofman's greatest crime wasn't the money he stole or the safes he cracked. It was proving that invisibility is possible, that survival exists outside the system, and that sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who simply refuse to be seen. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Hit subscribe, Because the invisible ones are everywhere, and their stories are just beginning to surface. And here's the real question nobody wants to ask. How many empty stores are you walking past every day, never knowing who might be living inside, completely unseen, surviving in the spaces you never think to look? The Roofman is in prison, but his legacy lives in every shadow, every empty retail space, every forgotten corner of the American dream. And that's a story that will never truly end.